There are major things happening right now at the Justice Department that I never thought we'd see in this administration. And it's even spreading to Republicans in the Senate. High level officials at Justice, as well as certain Republican senators, are starting to do things that Trump could easily perceive as disloyal. And guess who one of the people is who has done one of these things? This goes all the way up to none other than Pam Bondi herself, who appears to have broken with the president on something pretty major. She's done it in a subtle way, in a quiet way. She hasn't made a big public show about it, so you may not have noticed it or heard about it. But man, when MAGA starts to hear about this, they are going to go nuts. I think they will also see this as incredibly disloyal and add all this to the Jeffrey Epstein debacle, and they'll think the so-called deep state has gotten to Pam Bondi. And it'll just add to their growing belief that these top Trump appointees have been co-opted by that same alleged deep state. So let's take a look at this article and I'll show you what I'm talking about. U.S. attorney investigating two Trump foes departs amid pressure from the president. Eric Siebert had hit roadblocks investigating New York's Attorney General Letitia James and former FBI Director James Comey. He hit roadblocks. He was sent out. He was sicked on them like a dog to go find crimes and bring them to justice and basically put them in jail because the president doesn't like them. All right. And when he got into the case, he started finding out there's no evidence. Surprise, surprise. Who knew? Who would have thought? Who would have thought there's no evidence against these law abiding people? All right. So Eric Siebert, the U.S. Attorney for the Eastern District of Virginia, had recently told senior Justice Department officials that investigators found insufficient evidence to bring charges against Ms. James, and he'd also raised concerns about a potential case against James Comey. Mr. Trump has long viewed James and Comey as adversaries and has repeatedly pledged retribution against law enforcement officials who pursued him. All right, they went after him after he left office, and now he's going to make sure they pay that price. So he sent Eric Siebert out to do the dirty work, to go find crimes. In other words, there was no crime, right? In the old days, means more than 8 months ago. Um, what would happen is the governing officials would suspect someone had committed a crime because they had some evidence that led them to that conclusion. And then they would get the Justice Department to go investigate and the FBI and whatever to investigate and see if it was actually a crime. And if it wasn't, they would come back and say, oops, sorry, mistake, there was no crime there. And it would be dropped. But in this government, what's going on is the president decides he wants to prosecute somebody. So he tells his people, without any evidence at all, go find a crime. Well, this guy, Eric Siebert, who's been a justice for a while, not he wasn't he was appointed by Trump to this position, but he had been a justice for a long time before that. He had enough integrity to say, I'm not going to make crimes up. I'm not going to prosecute people who are innocent. So president wanted him out, as he always does when people won't do what he wants. So the president wanted him out. He resigned on Friday and he's gone. All right. But you're never going to believe where this leaves Pam Bondi. Pretty amazing because listen to this. Okay, so this just says that, Trump wants him fired because he believes Letitia James is guilty of something and James Comey as well. So he wants somebody to find out, to bring the evidence of the things they're guilty of, which should be easy to do if they were actually guilty of anything. Anyway, check this out. Mr. Trump's comments came after a high stakes, listen, internal debate raged on Friday over the fate of Mr. Siebert, with Mr. Trump's own appointees at the Justice Department and key Republicans on Capitol Hill arguing, get this, to retain the veteran prosecutor. Now, think about this. Don't think about it from our traditional Democratic point of view. Think about this from a dictatorial point of view. You know how dictators are. You got to do what they want, right? So think about this from Mr. Trump's point of view. He told Pam Bondi, find crimes on Letitia James and on James Comey. So she's assigned this guy to do that job. And he came back and said, can't find any crime. Okay. Now, what would you expect Pam Bondi to do? You'd expect her to say, go find a crime. You're disobeying orders. You got to do what we tell you to do. We're here to serve the president, and the president wants you to find a crime. That's what you would expect, right? That's what I would have expected. But look what happened. Seems a little disloyalty or a little break is taking place here. Attorney General Pam Bondi and Todd Blanche, the Deputy Attorney General who runs the day-to-day operations of justice, had privately defended Mr. Siebert against officials who had urged that he be fired and replaced with a prosecutor who would push the cases forward, according to a senior law enforcement official. Is that unbelievable or what? Pam Bondi has broken with the president on something he ordered her to do. Find crimes, find crimes that these two people committed. And the guy she sent out to do it couldn't do it. And she wanted him to stay on. She wants to keep him at justice. I couldn't believe that. That's crazy. She's broken with the president. He wants the guy fired. Pretty amazing. And I'll tell you, though, we're in such an upside down world right now. In the old days, our government would go after people who had committed crimes, and they would pardon people who were somehow wrongly convicted, or the president determined their trial was unfair, or things like that. They would have legitimate reasons for pardoning people. This president is doing the exact opposite. It's upside down world. He literally pardons the guilty and wants to imprison the innocent. Think about it. He's picking immigrants up off the streets who are here legally. They have green cards. They've never committed a crime since they've entered our borders. And he's deporting them, or he's taking them to ICE prisons and keeping them there for months incommunicado. They can't communicate with anybody on the outside. Their families don't even know where they are. What kind of world is this? What kind of president is this? I mean, think about it. He literally frees people who've committed crimes, 1,200 insurrectionists, people who attempted to cause an insurrection at the Capitol on January 6th. He has pardoned, and I don't know the guy, I don't remember his name, but I did a video on it a while back. If you want to know the name, leave a comment, and if anybody asks, I'll go find it for you, and I'll reply to your comment. But look, he freed a guy who was a drug lord, who had murdered people, who had brought drugs into our country. They are now all over the place for the last year saying, we got to get rid of these immigrants because they're bringing drugs into the country and they're killing our kids. But a guy who legitimately brought millions of dollars worth of drugs into our country, so much so that he had to actually kill people to keep his little, illegal enterprise, his criminal enterprise up and running. He murdered people. He pardoned him. Now, these two people who are completely innocent, Letitia James and James Comey, no crime, no, not even a hint of a crime from these people. You may not like them. You may not like what they did to the president. You may think they should go to prison for that, but that's not a crime. And you can't send people to prison who didn't commit a crime. Letitia James and James Comey both did their jobs. And he wants to put them in prison. Public servants, one elected by the people of New York. It's just, look, we're in a really bad place. People don't understand. A couple other quick points, though. William J. Pulte, who's the director of the Federal Housing Finance Agency, he's behind a lot of this. And you know what he's doing? He's a big, big home builder, Pulte Homes, right? They're nationwide, I think. But look, he's telling the president, we can get these people on mortgage fraud. They all have mortgages, right? We'll find a way to accuse them of mortgage fraud. And I'm sure that's what they had the Justice Department looking at, because they mentioned it. They brought it up in the news. And the guy couldn't find anything. No mortgage fraud. No, remember when the story came out a few weeks ago? Oh, Letitia James is being accused of mortgage fraud by the president. Well, now that it's been investigated, not a shred of evidence. The guy who wanted to find evidence because the president asked him to, wasn't able to. The guy who knew if he wasn't able to, he might get fired because he knows what this president is all about, still wasn't able to. In a good conscience, he couldn't do it because there wasn't evidence there. Let me see. I think that's the end of what I got there. Yep. Okay. Good. So, I mean, we are in bad shape. And I don't know if people understand. This is all straight out of the dictator's playbook, targeting enemies first, then pressuring prosecutors to find crimes later. Dictator's playbook, Dictator 101. And if they don't find crimes for you, instead of accepting their word for it, what do? You fire them. And you go look for someone else you can hire who will find the crimes. But, you know, find the crimes. But of course, that person will have to make crimes up because there are obviously no crimes here. And that's a dictatorship, folks. That's what we call a dictatorship. So, for all you MAGA people out there who to this day are still trying to say that Trump isn't going to be a dictator, he's not an authoritarian. Well, the only thing I can say about you at this point is that either you don't have enough knowledge to know what a dictator is, or you're willfully overlooking it because you actually want a dictator who will force people to live the way you want them to live. And I suspect for the majority of you that that's the case. You're literally willing to sell democracy down the drain because you can't take the fact that not everybody lives like you and not everybody thinks like you. So you want a strong man who will force people, even if it goes against the Constitution that you say you love. You want a strong man who will force people into agreement and obedience. You want to force people to live and think the way you think people should live. All that all this reveals about you is that in the end, you're the ones who hate our Constitution. It's not the liberals like we were always told. Remember, Rush Limbaugh, Sean Hannity, everybody, years, decades. Liberals hate the Constitution. They're always trying to tear it down. Guess what? It's not them. It's us. It's conservatives. It's Republicans. It's today's Republican Party. All right. So the gig is up. We see who you are, and we're no longer falling for your protest, claiming that you love the Constitution and claiming that you don't want a dictator. I'm not falling for that anymore. Because if you're still supporting this president, after all we've seen in the last 8 months, you do want a dictator. You just haven't admitted it to yourself. And you need to do that. You need to admit it to yourself. And you know what? Don't bother leaving hostile comments. I get a lot of hostile comments here. It's okay. I don't mind. But don't bother leaving comments to deny this. Okay? Because the more you try to deny it, the more we know it's true. You doth protest too much. Your protests are your smoking gun. All right? All right. That's it for me. I'm done. I'm done. I'll see you next time, and thanks for watching.